So today I want to educate you just a little bit on why I don't like using machines and why, if you look at it and see, if you look at gyms compared to back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, it all changed when machines made it into the industry by Mr. Tanny. Now you look at gyms nowadays, it's all about machines. I'm going to just give you a brief explanation on why I don't like them. We could talk for 2 hours about this, but I just wanted to give you a brief explanation to get you to start thinking if you're a trainer using them or if you're an actual person. You're always training your body. We have an internal environment and an external environment. These environments are always teaching our body something. And that's how our body learns. When you do something and you want to develop a skill, our body works through a phase of learning. You basically learn cognitively. You learn about the skill. You learn how to understand it, like riding a bike. When you hop on a bike for the first time, you're trying to understand what to use and what not to use, right? And then the next phase is like your interpretation of it, right? What is good and what is bad? What am I going to use to actually ride the bike? How am I going to balance? And then obviously autonomy is like the skill developed. And that's the process of learning, right? You learn it, you understand it, you learn to interpret it, the good and bad, and then it's actually a skill. And that's how the body learns. But you're always training your body, you're always teaching it. So when you step on a machine or you lay down on a machine or you sit in a machine, whatever you do on a machine, you're actually training your body to use different muscle systems in that environment, internally and externally. Externally, if you're doing a leg curl, you're teaching your body to use those muscles without the stability of the postural muscles under load while seated, right? Which you're never really seated pushing a load. And research shows when you sit down, you actually basically shut off all your stabilizer muscles. Now you're using all your global muscles, which creates increased joint compression, sharing, and torsion because your postural muscles, your muscles that hold you up, they stabilize the joints and things like that. So right there you have a problem. At the same time, if you're doing the leg extension, you're using it in an open chain environment, which is when the distal segment is actually moving, like your feet are moving, and the proximal segment, your pelvis, is actually somewhat stabilized in this machine. But if you look at adults, we actually live in a closed chain environment, right? We're moving away from the surface. Our feet are actually more fixed, and our pelvis moves over our femur or lower extremities. So you're not really training the body neurologically, and you're actually basically what's called, you're making faulty motor engrams or faulty computer programs, right? The bottom line is the goal is to develop a skill, right? You want a high level of attention initially to have a lot of cognitive freedom. Think about when you learn how to swing a bat with a fastball. Initially, you had to have a high level of attention. After a while, right, you had a high level of cognitive freedom because you could get up there, swing the bat, you could read the ball, and you got way more comfortable. Well, on a machine, this doesn't really take a high level of attention, but it creates a high level of cognitive freedom. So it works opposite in the body. And what you're doing is you're actually training your body in an unstable environment improperly. And it's not functional, as much as I hate using that word. As humans, when we develop as children, we actually develop in the sagittal plane first, which is flexion and extension. When I say this, we're actually developing the muscle chains first. Machines primarily focus on flexion movements, right? They're not even usually focusing on the extension. They usually focus on flexion, more the concentric movement, and they're not even focusing on the eccentric, which is the muscle reduction. Muscles are always producing movement, stabilizing, and reducing movement. So machines only focus on that concentric part in flexion, or we could say the sagittal plane. But as we develop as kids around 4.5 to 6 months, we actually roll, right? And when you roll, you're developing the frontal plane stabilizers and muscle chains. So we need to move in the frontal plane. I can't think of one chain. Frontal plane is like side to side. I can't think of one machine that trains you in the frontal plane. Same thing, transverse plane. When we develop on our stomach as kids and we learn to crawl, opposite arm and leg, we're developing transverse or contralateral muscle systems, right? Now, there's not many machines that focus on the transverse plane. So you're taking people in life, doesn't matter what they do. You're taking athletes of all types of sports that primarily move in the transverse plane, let's say, and you're actually only training them in the sagittal plane, which is this way, flexion, extension, and you're only focusing on the concentric part of the movement, not the eccentric or the isometric, which is the stabilization. So the reason I don't like machines is, number one, they only focus on one plane of motion. They're not really focusing on the frontal and the transverse. And they only focus on one part of the sagittal plane, the flexion. Well, most people have flexion dysfunctions nowadays, right? Disc pathologies, things like that. straight cervical spines. So, it's not really going to benefit you. At the same token, another reason I don't like it, muscles always are producing movement, reducing movement, and stabilizing joints. Machines primarily 99% teach you how to produce movement. They don't focus on the isometric or the eccentric, which is force reduction. The isometric part, this is another reason. Research shows by Vladimir Janda and Karl Lewitt that when you sit down, almost 90% of your stabilizers just shut off. Your stabilizers, your tonic muscles, your postural muscles, your aerobic muscles. They keep you up. Your core, they stabilize your joints. They prevent compression sharing and torsion under load. And they allow your global systems, or the bigger muscles, to be used efficiently without injury. So when you sit down and now you're using these big muscles under load without stabilization, you increase joint compression, shearing, and torsion. And you're teaching your body to move without stability. Stability always precedes mobility. And this is why most people get injured, because they don't have stability, right? Think about this. Someone has a shoulder injury, right? Just a general shoulder injury. I don't want to get into the 5 joints, but what do most therapists do? They give you a cable or a band and they do this. Most people have shoulder injuries because they have an instability of one of the 5 shoulder joints. So now you're loading them without stability in an open chain environment. So it doesn't really do anything except create faulty motor engrams. So it's another reason why I don't like machines. A third reason is most people use these machines for aesthetic gains. Well, if you're a bodybuilder, machine's a functional piece of equipment, bottom line. But these machines are not meant to fit your body, right? And you have to look at life and sport. We're always, according to Paul Chek, using primal patterns. We're always squatting, bending, pushing, pulling, lunging, and walking. Most machines don't focus on this. Most machines teach you to actually use your global systems without your postural system. They teach you to basically balance your center of gravity way outside your base of support. So if you look at your leg press when you're laying down on your back and your legs are up against the platform, if you look at your center of gravity, which is right behind your umbilicus or your belly button, it's way below your base of support, which is your feet. So the only way you're going to get from that seated position to that, laying down, standing position, I guess you could call it, is to use your hip flexors or your quads. So you become quad dominant, you end up with knee problems and hip problems. I see this all the time in women. They have patellotrachan problems, ACL problems. They have ligamentous problem, degeneration, meniscal problems. And you see this as well with people that are using leg extensions, overusing leg extension machines, or the Smith machine. That's the bar that's actually on a pulley system. If you look at it, you're actually leaning against the bar. Your center of gravity is way behind your base of support. So you're actually creating quad dominance. So you're teaching the body anytime when you're out in society, the only way you're going to get from a squat position or a lunge position up to standing is to overuse your quads. And that's not how the body works. The body actually uses systems of muscles. The body doesn't know muscles. If you looked at the beginning of the clip and you read the quote by Carl Bolbath, the body does not know anything of muscles. The body only knows systems, and that's why we have to train the body, right? The core, people talk about the core. The core is not one muscle, it's a system of muscles. You have a core in your shoulder, you have a core in your neck. You have different global systems, like the anterior oblique system, right? Or the posterior oblique system, like your glute and your lat and your thoracolumbar fascia. You have other systems. The body uses systems of muscles to create movement. It does not know muscles. If you train your body to know just muscles, well, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And you're going to get injury, increased compression, sharing, and torsion, labrum problems, low back pain, degeneration, spondylosis, spondylolisthesis, atlas problems, meniscal tears, chronic ACL problems, and I see this all the time. People coming in from rehab, coming in from getting trained by an athletic trainer on their sports team or their physical therapist, and they're training them on machines. There is no time in life when you're laying on your back, seated, okay, or laying on your stomach pushing weight, unless you're a porn star. That is the only time. So from a functional perspective, that stuff doesn't work, and it's actually not making us better. Everyone is like Pavlov's dogs. You hear the bell ring, you see something in a magazine, the TRX comes out, and everyone jumps all over it, right? We're like dogs. We're waiting for the next best piece of equipment. Well, the next best piece of equipment is your body. And we need to start using cable machines, dumbbells, kettlebells, balls. These things are going to benefit you from a functional perspective. So hopefully you've learned something. Take a look at your life and take a look at what's going to benefit you. And the bottom line is, I can tell you for sure, a machine is not going to benefit you.